Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Catholic ReCon Testimonies from Reverts and Converts. I'm your host, Eddie Trask. Please remember to subscribe and share this channel with family and friends. And please also, if you personally have a Catholic Christian testimony to share, please reach out to me. This week's guest is Chinseta Grande. Sita, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to see you, and I appreciate the willingness of everyone that comes on to share what God has done in their lives. So, how did your journey begin?
Well, to begin, I was born into a Buddhist family. So, pretty much generation after generation of my whole entire family is all Buddhist. Yeah. So, huge difference, right? A lot of people are surprised to hear that I'm Catholic. And to begin my story, I never knew who Jesus Christ was. I think the first time I really truly heard about him was in high school, AP European history. I remember there was a big disagreement amongst classmates. A lot of people of different denominations, some Jews who were Jewish, some were Protestant, some were Catholic. And there was a disagreement because I remember my teacher mentioning how wars started. A lot of wars start because of religion. And then another student mentioned how, well, not everyone should believe in Jesus. And I thought to myself, like, what's the big deal? Why is everyone arguing about this person, Jesus? But I never really questioned who he was because I didn't know enough. And I never really um, felt like I needed to. But at the same time, growing up, my family wasn't very religious, even if we were Buddhist.
Okay.
So I think it was like maybe once a year, my parents would go to the temple, and most of the time it was for um, Cambodian New Year, which is kind of like Chinese New Year. So I never really understood what it meant to be Buddhist, what you believed in. I just knew that, hey, be nice to people. That was one of the biggest things that my parents taught me, and I think it was because a lot has to do with the way you grew up. It was more of a cultural thing when it came to religion versus being, I would say, devoted to your religion or to your faith. And then it started to where when I went off to college for the first time right after high school, I remember a friend of mine, her roommate was Christian, and she always tried to invite me to Bible study. And I thought about it. I'm like, hey, maybe I'll go, but it was never where I felt like I needed to go. Um, and I never really understood again. I didn't know anything about Jesus. I didn't understand why I needed to go. And it wasn't um, till when I went to boot camp for the Marine Corps, where every weekend, every Sunday, you were given time to go to whatever church service you needed to go to. And people kept mentioning to me, like, just pick a religion to go to, just so you avoid the drill instructors. And majority of the females in my platoon, my boot camp platoon, they were Protestant. I think there were three Catholics, one Jew, a handful of Pentecostal, and then the rest were just Protestant. So I thought, go with the crowd, go with the Protestants. And I remember every Sunday, I felt like I was just escaping, just to get a break from boot camp. I was going to Protestant church, and I'd see people getting really into the service again. I just don't remember, and I know I was listening. I just don't remember understanding like anything about Jesus. Like they mentioned his name, but never really just explaining who Jesus was. And so after boot camp, got to my first duty station, my roommate was also, I think she might have been a Protestant. She always invited me to and try to invite me to Bible study. And I said, oh, maybe one day. Never was interested. And finally, my journey. really, I guess, really begins when I met my future husband. We were dating at the time, and he did tell me that he was Catholic, and I'll never forget when he told me he was going to mass, and it was 30 minutes in. I thought 30 minutes in, but I get a phone call, and I said, I thought you were at mass. And he's like, oh, it finished. I said, I thought mass lasted longer than 30 minutes. And this was a Sunday mass. And because I had gone to mass before, it was for a coworker's son's first communion. And then I also attended one in boot camp because we were at the rifle range, and the only service they had available was a Catholic mass. And so everybody decided to go to the Catholic mass just to, again, to get away from the drill instructors. So that's why I kind of knew that mass was longer than 30 minutes. And so the boyfriend at the time, my husband, said, oh, well, it was a fast one. Of course, I'm gullible. And so I said, okay. Well, I never questioned him, or he never questioned me about my religion. One day we had a trip going down we were stationed in Virginia, from Virginia down to Florida, and that's where he's from, and his family lives in Florida. So the Marine Corps had planned this trip to go to Orlando, and he had asked me, how do you feel about meeting my parents? And I said, I'd love to meet your parents. So he said, okay, well, they're going to pick us up in 2 hours, or I'm sorry, they live 2 hours away. So they're going to pick us up. They're going to drive us back to where they live, and we'll get to meet the family. And of course, I was nervous, and I said, okay, that's great. So I meet them. We drive to their town, and they pull up to a Catholic church. And I believe this was a Saturday, maybe a Friday. And my boyfriend at the time, he freaks out. And he's like, Mom, Dad, what are we doing here? And they're like, oh, we made it to daily mass. And I looked at him like, what do you mean? Like, he's like, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that this was going to happen. I didn't know they were going to take you to mass. And I said, it's okay. I'm fine. I'm fine. It's not going to scare me away. So we went into church, and I remember sitting next to his mother, and she opened up in the hymnal missal that was sitting in front of us, and she kind of guided me through the way and pointed to everything. And one thing I remember most, because the other two experiences I had in the Catholic Church, one was, of course, in boot camp, and so you shared that space, that I guess I forgot what it was called, but like the chapel with many different religions, Protestant, Catholics. So I never really saw a crucifix. And then when I went to the first communion, I was so far back, and there were so many people that I didn't really take the time to look in that church. So this was the first time I really got to experience like the Catholic Church. And I saw the crucifix for the first time. And I thought to myself, like, there's a person hanging on the cross. And so I never again understood. And it wasn't until my soon to be mother-in-law, started explaining to me certain things about the mass and why Catholics do the things they do. And I was just like hooked after that. And and again, it scared my boyfriend at the time, because he thought that I was just going to be, felt like I was being pushed away, because he had no idea. He didn't want to push Catholicism on me, especially from his parents.
Yeah.
So, after that trip, we made it back to base, and now I'll never forget. Like, I asked him, like, I think the following weekend or 2 weekends after that, I said, "Is it okay if we go to mass?" And his eyes kind of opened up, like, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yeah, I love to go." And so we started attending mass on base. And then I just felt in my heart, like, this was the place I needed to be. I felt like I was home. And sorry, I get emotional talking about it. But I remember telling him, I said, how do I become Catholic? And he thought to, he looked, he's like, are you sure? I said, don't think I'm doing this for you. This is for me. And so right after mass, we went to see the priest. And the priest at the time there was Father Mike, and I introduced myself, and I said, I'm not sure how to ask this, but how does someone become Catholic? And he's like, oh, that's a great question. You'll go through RCIA, and I kind of looked at him and was like, oh, don't worry, they just started, so you'll learn what RCIA is Monday nights. And he kind of looked at me and he asked, like, do you have an idea of who your sponsor would be? And I looked at, soon to be husband, and I call him soon to be husband because I didn't know at the time he was going to be my husband, but he said, I don't mind being her sponsor. So he attended every RCIA class except for one because he had training that he had to go to, and I had him next to me, but of course, 3 weeks into, I think about 3 or 4 weeks into dating, he proposed, and that's why I said soon to be husband so often, because we didn't date for that long. So, but that's where my journey began, finding truth. And and I'm the kind of person, I love to read. I have so much questions where I have to find the answer on my own. Just because someone tells me something, I usually don't just accept it without following through with researching and finding those answers on my own. And that's where it all began. And I've never looked back. And I think I scared probably a lot of people in my life, not to where I have no relationship with them. It was more of like, they thought that I was becoming Catholic for my husband, and they thought, oh, you're just doing it to get married. And I said, no, I want to become Catholic before he even proposed. I'm sure he proposed when I decided to be Catholic, but that's the joke. But this was for myself, and I just felt like this is where I needed to be. And the crazy thing is, I look back on life, and I always remember as a kid praying to God. And for some reason, and I don't know where I picked it up from, but I've always done the sign of the cross when I prayed. Yeah, I know, scary.
That's
So
amazing. What?
yeah, and I, like, since I was 4 years old, like, I remember, praying privately. Sorry, but
No, don't apologize. It's amazing. Wow.
and doing the sign of the cross, and I didn't know a lot of Catholics in my life, and when I came out to where told everybody that I was becoming Catholic, all of a sudden everybody around me was like, "Oh, I was born Catholic." I'm like, "Well, where have you been like this whole time?" Right? So, I mean, a lot of people I served with in the Marine Corps were Catholic, but the hard part for them was saying that they weren't practicing Catholics. They were all born Catholic, grew up Catholic, and I don't know, where in their life it had changed, whether it was, when they joined the Marine Corps or whatever it may be. Like, for my husband, he was always, he grew cradle Catholic, grew up Catholic, practicing Catholic, and he just got lazy. And, he never steered away from the Catholic faith, testing other religions. He always had a relationship with Christ, and he always called himself a lazy Catholic. And for him, he always says, I'm the reason that why he went back to the Catholic Church to where he was practicing. But I think, our journey was, we helped each other along the way in our journey. So, but
Well,
yeah,
that's as so many other stories. That is beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
yeah,
What you see the crucifix for the first time and you didn't know about Jesus in that moment, I suppose, did you think I've got to now research the life of this man that I'm looking at on a
yeah.
cross?
Yes. I to learn that someone would die for me, not just me, but for every person, it just is, I can't even explain it.
Yeah.
I think you have to experience it yourself when you find Christ. And it's okay. Crying, it's me. I'm okay with it. So, but and I don't, and I'm not very emotional, but when it comes to Christ, it's it's so hard to explain unless you experience it. And I think every individual has to experience on their own, because it's just, I can't explain it. Seeing him on the cross, and then really understanding why he died for us. And I'll never forget, to, like, I guess, understand it more, not just opening up the Bible and reading scripture and understanding, how he got to where he had to die for us and resurrected. It was watching the Passion of the Christ for the first time. And I mean, that even opened up my heart and my eyes even more. And I didn't understand. I'm like, how can anybody who grew up Christian like walk away from Christ? And you hear it all the time. And so I guess I was just so, I wouldn't say dumb when it came to Christianity and Catholicism and all of it. I just assume, I guess I was just more gullible, to where I thought all Catholics were just practicing Catholics and they stayed Catholic forever, or all Christians stayed Christians. But I soon learned that people fall away and turn their backs on Christ, and people down the road are reverts. They come back, and everybody's journey is different. But I just didn't understand, like, how once you got to know Jesus, how anybody could break, end their relationship. And even when I'm praying with my son and teaching him the prayers, and he would ask me, "Did you remember it when you were a little girl, mommy?" And I have to explain to him. I said, "I didn't grow up Catholic." So he's always surprised and he's confused, like, "What do you mean?" I said, "I'll explain it to you one day." And he knows. I explained to him, not everybody knows Jesus. That's why we have to pray for everyone's conversion. And so, I mean, every night when we pray, we're always praying for the conversion of not just our family,
Yeah.
but for the whole world, so that everyone can experience that love from God, that he loved us so much to send his only son to us. So,
Yes.
yeah.
How much of your so coming from how many generations removed from Cambodia are you?
So,
Is it grandparents that
so I'm first
your
generation
first generation?
American. Yeah,
Okay.
none of was first generation, and I was the first one to become a Christian. And then I also found out that one of my cousins, my first cousin, he was also Christian. And again, I guess just didn't know. I assume, I'm like, "Hey, I heard you're Catholic." And he looked at me. He's like, "No." And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry." He's like, "I'm non-denominational, but I'm still Christian." I said, "Oh, okay." Like, I didn't know I offended him because I just assumed. But and my sister's Catholic now too, and I don't know her whole journey. That's something we haven't really talked about. But became Catholic a few years ago, and I became Catholic back in 2010. So, funny story. We were supposed to go to Pre-Cana back in February, back in the Diocese of Arlington, and there was such a big snowstorm, snowmageddon, that they canceled all the pre-Cana classes for like a month. So they rescheduled it a week or 2 weeks before our wedding date, and they had 100 couples in this hall And I'll never forget when, again, I thought everybody was Catholic that was in there. And it turned out there were people who were going to get married in the Catholic Church. And whether it be the soon to be bride or groom, one of them might not have been Catholic, but they had to go through the class in order to get married um, in the Catholic Church. And I was just so happy to be there because I knew I was getting married, not just to my husband, but I was going to also become Catholic. So that at Easter Vigil, I became Catholic a week before our wedding date. So yeah, so I received 5 sacraments before in 1 week, if you think about it. So everything but uh, holy orders, obviously,
And
and
anointing of the sick. Yeah.
right. So that I always look back and think about like how many people can say that they did that. So,
That's incredible.
yeah.
That's
So.
absolutely incredible. So then how did the Buddhist side of the family respond to such a deviation from this cultural, generational, ritual um, religion?
So my parents have always been supportive of me when it came to my decisions. I not that I was like a troublemaker growing up or anything like that. I always thought things through before I did anything. So they were always supportive. And when I told them, I was becoming Catholic, they seemed to be fine with it. Um, I think it was more of they really thought like a lot of people did was I became Catholic to get married in the Catholic Church and my husband forced me to, which was never the case. I think they were just more accepting with I made the decision on my own and they supported me. I think I'll never forget one time we went to visit my family because my family's from California and we were living in Virginia at the time. And we were like making sure we attended mass. And I'll never forget we were gonna take a family trip to 4 hours away, and I told my dad, I said it was to see family and also to go clamming. And I said, well, we need to go to mass. And my dad's like, you can't miss a, one time. I said, we try not to miss one time. Like this is important to us. So we ended up, I think we raced home that day and making it to an evening mass. So, but I I think a lot of people finally accepted the fact that I did it for myself because even at times I felt like but shy, especially like saying grace before meals
Yeah.
in front of family because again, most people in my family didn't were never exposed to Catholicism, so they kind of looked at me. I'll never forget my cousin's daughter looking at me. She was young. She was like maybe 8 or 9. She kind of looked at me like, "What are you doing?" So explaining this is what I do. I have to. I thank God for the meal I have and everything I have. So she's like, okay, you know. So I think I've never really felt like anybody was, angry or anything like that. I steered away from, being a Buddhist. Again, like my family, like even when I was a kid, I think I asked someone, maybe a cousin, well, as a Buddhist, what do you believe in? And they couldn't even answer my question. And I'll never forget growing up and going to the temple and just hearing chants. But the thing is, you don't understand what those chants are. But at least with like the Catholic faith, if you go to a Latin mass, you can find out the priest, what the rest of the church is saying when we do our response to anything the priest says, and when we're participating in the mass, you can look up Latin. Latin is there for you to figure out and understand. But
Yeah.
when you go to a I guess a Buddhist service, like they're saying chants and responding, but I don't know what it is. And a lot of times people say, well, it's in another language. Well, what language is it? They can't explain it to me. So, I mean, I never again looked into, that religion, but I just know that most of my family to this day are Buddhist and, I pray for their conversion. Um, I just know that I'm a lot happier ever since found Jesus. I've always been a lot happier, um, living life and understanding why I'm here versus questioning why I'm here when I was, I guess, Buddhist or not Christian.
Have you had a chance to share your story much at all?
People would ask me,
Yeah.
and it's people who are surprised. Um, family friends that I meet for the first time. It's a lot of family friends in my husband's side of the family when I meet them for the first time, and they're like, "Oh, you weren't Catholic before you got married?" And I said, "No, I became Catholic a week before I got married." um, but they'll ask me for my story, and they're all shocked. A
Yeah.
lot of them are shocked because again, that's like two opposite sides of religion. It's one thing for a Protestant to become Catholic because you're kind of in the same area. But I I enjoy telling my story. It's not often I tell a story because, as you can see, I do get emotional. um, but which is okay. And I I I always get questions from even like people who used to be Catholic, and they're like, "Oh, well, I used to be Catholic, but I left for these reasons." And again, I feel sad for them where they would leave the Catholic faith because the Catholic Church doesn't accept what they want in life, whether it be like women being ordained, or divorce. I think that's a big one, which is sad too, because a lot of the people that I know, people I worked with, people I served with in the military, where a lot of them said they grew up Catholic and then they stopped being Catholic and come to find out most of their parents are divorced. And I don't know if that has anything to do why they kind of steered away from becoming continuing being Catholic. Um, but it does, I do see it a lot with people who kind of just decide not to be Catholic anymore. And everybody's journey is different, but I just hope and pray that they do come back to the Catholic faith
Yeah.
and realize like, hey, I've been away for too long, I need to return. So
Yeah. I was asking about you sharing it because it is powerful and the emotion is powerful as well. It's, as I said earlier, like, don't ever apologize for that. I think you should feel empowered to share it with that
mhm.
emotion, especially if you have trouble saying the name of Jesus or talking about his death. That's very that's very powerful. I just gotta say. So, um,
And
go
mhm.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to mention how I just feel like there's people who never really thought to become Catholic, and they just make assumptions, right?
Yeah.
Um, Assumptions of, hey, you worship Mary. Hey, why shouldn't priests get married? Or why do you pray the rosary? Jesus didn't tell us to pray the rosary. I just feel like when people try to, I guess I wouldn't say pick a fight, but when they don't really want to know the answers, they kind of block that away from where they just want to argue with you. Because one of the things when I first mentioned to my husband when at the time when we were dating and I wanted to become Catholic, he asked me, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Well, why wouldn't I be sure?" He's like, "You have to know that a lot of people out there don't like Catholics." And I said, "Well, are isn't most of the country Christian?" He said, "Yeah, but you're going to have to, in a way, defend yourself and defend the church." And I said, "Well, I'm willing to do it if I need to. If someone wants to talk about it and debate it, that's fine. But if you're going to have a screaming fest, like anybody, you're going to shut down and not want to." But
Yeah.
um, I I'm I love sharing my story, and I hope someone out there who decides to watch this conversation we're having and hear my story, like instead of arguing about it, go and search the answer. And I think um, it helped too for me when I went looking for answers. It was also watching conversions of people as well. And I remember watching EWTN and watching, I think it was Journey Home, where you see a lot of people come back to to the Catholic Church and or just converts. And um, I just, I, I hope and pray for everybody. Um, whatever you may be going through in life, we have Jesus, right? So, yeah.
That's so well said. I want to ask you one more question, Sita.
Mhm.
I've asked this a few times on the channel. If you can go back to when you were, what age were you when you had that experience at Mass?
Oh, I was 22. I was 22 years old.
Is there a message that you would have for a 22-year-old woman who doesn't know Jesus, doesn't kind of like you, like what is I'm hearing this word, I happen to come across this specific video. What would you tell her if she feels like I'm here watching this for a reason? What should I do next?
Be willing to open up your heart and mind to, I guess, a new life and accepting Christ as your Lord and Savior. And knowing that nobody can take that away from you, that relationship. And people in life, human beings can disappoint you anytime in your life, right? But there's one that will never disappoint you. And all it takes is for you to open up your heart. Um, and there are people out there, um, every Catholic church that across the world that the doors are open for you to find Jesus. And when I mean the world, I mean the world. It's the one of the greatest experience that I had was attending mass in the Bahamas and seeing that, wow, this is universal, right? No matter where you go to mass in the whole world, even if it's in a different language, you know what's happening. We're all united. And it's just amazing how far, how great Catholicism is, because a different state, different city, no matter where you go, you can find a Catholic church. And if you if you're willing again to open up your heart and be loved, that's all you have to do. Just be open-minded and leave everything at the cross, because he'll be there to help you.
Great message. Thank you for answering that
Mm-hmm.
sincerely. That was great. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for going there, for being willing to share the journey. Was there anything else that we did not cover that you wanted to cover?
Um, those are, one of the things that I'd like to mention. If anybody who feels like they're questioning the Catholic faith, falling away from, and they just feel like they might need to go back, it's go to the nearest church, find a priest to talk to, um, even find a Bible study. One of my faith grew even more when I after we got out of the Marine Corps and moved to Florida. I went to college and I met my now best friend. Met her in Bible study, and come to find out, she and her mom had a prayer group every Wednesday. We'd pray the Rosary and the Patriotic Rosary, and a bunch of other different chaplets we'd pray, and that just helped me through my week. Not just going to adoration and going to mass, but having people around you that that share your faith. I think that's important. That I think that would help anyone who feels like they're falling away or questioning the Catholic faith. If you don't feel comfortable talking to a priest, there's people out there willing to talk to you and help you understand. Even it means going back to RCIA to learn more about the Catholic faith if you've been away for too long and kind of have forgotten about things, and that's the only thing I can remember to mention.
That's good.
So
That's good.
yeah,
Well, blessings to you and your family, extended
thank you,
family as well, and everything,
thank you,
all your intentions. Yeah, I encourage all of you that listen to not just this testimony, but as a reminder, any testimony, please pray for everyone that is sharing their story and all the people that they mention, all the people that are far from the faith. Some people have rejected the faith outright. Some people don't even know what they're missing. Pray for all of them. I encourage you to as often as possible. And again, Sita, thank you. Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
All right. Until next time, take care and God bless.
God
Bye.
bless. Thank you.